this. All right, I always do that. That's better. Okay, forgive me for that. Here we go. So again, we're going to be studying on Satan this morning. And the first thing that I want to emphasize in our study of Satan is from Deuteronomy 29:29, which is that the secret things belong to the Lord our God, but the things revealed belong to us and to our sons forever. So there are going to be a number of things that we talk about that are somewhat speculative in nature, because there's not any one passage of scripture where all of these different things are described for us. God doesn't, in one chapter lay out who is Satan, where does he come from, where is he going, what are his motivations. We have to pull them together from lots of different passages. So there will be times when we just have to say, well, I'm not sure, I don't understand that. And that's okay, because there are some things that God doesn't reveal for a reason. But when it comes to Satan, he does reveal to us many things. And there's a reason for that. 2 Corinthians 2 and verse 11 says that no advantage would be taken of us by Satan, for we are not ignorant of his schemes. So God is going to give us knowledge of Satan so that we'll understand what he's going to try to do in order that we will not be taken advantage of by him. So what we learn is going to be very practical in nature over the next few weeks, so that we will allow God to defeat Satan through us. So as we get started on that, this morning what I'd like to do is study the various names of Satan. You can learn an awful lot about somebody just by understanding what they're called, which used to be, of course, the case in our names, right? Like Mike Smith in our congregation, if he traced his lineage back far enough, you would probably find somebody running a blacksmith shop. Or Officer Fletcher here of the Lake Wales PD, if he traces his name back far enough, would probably find someone who is a maker of bows and arrows, because that's what the word Fletcher literally means. Or baker or cook, or any of those various names. So as we study the names of Satan, we're going to understand something about his nature and his character. So we start off in Mark chapter 1 and verse 13 that says, Jesus was in the wilderness 40 days being tempted by Satan, and he was with the wild beasts, and angels were ministering to him. So right off the bat, we have the name Satan, which is a name that we're probably very familiar with for a reason. It's the most frequent term we find in Scripture for this character. It is used 53 times or so in the Bible. And actually that Hebrew word, Satan, is a very common word, and it just means adversary. And you can look it up in a number of normal contexts where it just simply describes somebody who is opposing someone else. But when you stick the definite article in front of it so that it reads the Satan, which we don't speak that way, but in Hebrew, that's the way it is. The Satan becomes a proper name, and really it becomes a very highly descriptive title. So what does that make you think of when you think of the Satan as the adversary? Oh, Bruce, you're on mute. Unmute yourself. There you go.
In referencing Satan so many times in the Bible, when it says the Satan, to me seems like it's always there. The adversary is always there. That's what the Satan means to me.
Good. Well, and that's important. We got to remember that this is not somehow a personification of evil, not some kind of a literary fictional character, but an actual spiritual being who actively opposes us and who is our adversary and our enemy. And that's what we got to keep in mind, not to fraternize with the enemy, because Satan is going to make himself appear like he has our best interests in mind when he absolutely does not. He is on the opposite team. He is our enemy. He seeks to murder and to lie and to destroy. And so just a very important point, when Satan tempts us, He's going to make it sound really good, like, oh, you really need this, or oh, you really want this. No, he's trying to take advantage of us. He is our adversary, our enemy. So don't pick him up and play with him. He is a foe. Anybody else? All right, let me go to the next screen. And well, let me ask you before I do that, what is another word that you often hear used to describe Satan?
Devil.
Yep, very good, Alan. The next word indeed coming up on our screen is going to be the word devil. Matthew chapter 4, verse 1, Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. So it's the same character as Satan, but it's a different title, a different name. And what's the difference? Well, that's a Greek term, diabolos. It is a common word also. There are some normal contexts where it is used, and it means slanderer. 1 Timothy 3 and verse 11 is one example of that. So it just means a slanderer. But again, same thing as with Satan. When you add the definite article to the front of it, it becomes the devil. And now it's a proper name and a highly descriptive title. It's used 34 times in the New Testament. In what ways is the devil a slanderer?
Well, I believe he's godless, so he's basically trying to do anything he can to discredit God.
Good.
Yeah, he slanders anything that we have in our minds as being godless or godful. You know, if he doesn't want us to believe in God, so he's constantly an adversary, if you will, to be godless in that respect.
Excellent point. He slanders God and also thereby slanders us too. Very good.
It says in Revelation 12:9, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world.
Yes, very, very good. Focusing on the deception that he uses. I also like, and we'll see your title in a moment. I also like Revelation 12:10 about how he is the accuser of our brethren. I think that really goes along with the idea of him being the slanderer. He slanders God for sure, and he also slanders us in the sense of, I don't know if it's a perfect illustration, but I oftentimes think of a courtroom drama where, you know, you've got the defendant and then you have the prosecutor who brings forth charges. And, you know, of course, you've got the defense attorney and you've got the judge. And I think that's kind of the idea here as well, that, you know, Satan sort of serves in the role of the prosecutor. It's coming before God like he did in the book of Job and saying, you see this guy right here? He's done bad. You've got to punish him because you are God. And then we have a defense attorney that comes along beside us, who is, of course, Jesus. He is the advocate, and he speaks for us, not to say that we didn't do it. We, of course, did it. We are sinners, and we do deserve judgment. But he says, I have taken upon myself the penalty due. So in that way, Jesus serves as our defender and our advocate. Again, maybe not a perfect illustration, but one that kind of works for me when I think about it this way. Just kind of a curiosity to share with you. The King James often translates that word in the plural as devils, and that is correct. It's not a big deal. It doesn't make a whole lot of difference, but literally, technically speaking, devil only refers to Satan. And we ought to translate those words as demons, plural, who are distinguished from the devil. So there's one devil, and he's got many demons who are at his call. Again, you're not doing a whole, you know, big deal of harm by missing that, but it's just a curiosity I wanted to share. 2 Corinthians 6, verses 14 and 15 is another term. It's the only place you find this one, but it has also got a lot of meaning to it, where Paul says to the Corinthians, do not be bound together with unbelievers. For what partnership has righteousness and lawlessness? What fellowship has light with darkness? what harmony has Christ with Belial, or what has a believer in common with an unbeliever? That term is much more frequently used in the Old Testament, and it means something like worthlessness or hopeless ruin or the destruction caused by wickedness. It's like the desolation that happens after a wicked period of history. And during the intertestamental period in between Malachi and John the Baptist, it seems to have been used by the Jews as a proper name for Satan, meaning the ruiner. So if you want to think of Belial as Satan, it kind of is a nuance of his character that means the one who ruins, the one who uses wickedness to cause destruction. And he, of course, is using temptation to trick us into ruining ourselves. To go right along with that is Revelation 9 and verse 11, where it is identified Satan, they have as their king over them, the angel of the abyss, that's Satan. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in the Greek, he has the name Apollyon. And both of those two terms in their respective languages mean the same thing. It means the destroyer. So, this is painting a pretty fearsome and bleak picture of who Satan is. He is not our friend. He is a powerful adversary who seeks to destroy us. And when we allow him to, he has the power to destroy us. He tempts and causes us to fall short of God's expectations. He causes us to sin, and as a result, causes God to have to judge. And that is why the blood of Jesus is so very necessary. All right, let me pause, because those are the really important ones. I want to see if there's any comments or questions so far. Has this taught us some things about our adversary, the Satan?
Well, I was pondering the many little D devils and the one big D devil, right? As Satan. But in reading about Satan, it seems he can appear anywhere in any form or in different attitudes of men. For instance, if we read 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 12, where it says, "But what I do, that I will do, that I may cut off occasion of them which desire occasion, that wherein they glory, they may be found even as we. For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works." When I read that, I got the feeling that Satan can almost transform himself into anything. And it sort of just left question marks all over me.
Well, and keep building those thoughts, because in successive lessons, we'll talk about some of the different things that Scripture reveals that Satan does. And we will learn things like temptation. We will learn things like false teaching. We'll learn about even some of the circumstances and the illnesses that he can inflict upon people, all of which are designed to rob their souls, right? To destroy them, not physically, but spiritually.
Yeah.
In many of those ways, he uses people to do that. So I'll give you one example that we talked about in class this morning. When Peter said to Jesus, "I know, Lord, you'll never experience this suffering." And Jesus said, "Get behind me, Satan."
Get behind me, Satan, right.
Yeah. In that context.
And even it said that Satan entered Judas.
Right, right, right. So we have to be very careful about being pawns of Satan in this world today, and of realizing that when I mean, even people who are intimate with us, our brothers and sisters in Christ, our spouses, our children, our parents, if they encourage us to sin, they are at that moment in the role of Satan. He is using them against us. So we're going to explore all those things in gory detail as we continue through this series. So those are very, very good thoughts.
Gory detail.
Gory detail. We're gonna dig deep down into it as we study this. All right. So the last two things that I want to share with you are they're just sort of curiosities, and I don't want to chase this rabbit too far, but there are a couple of other titles that are found in Scripture for the Satan, and I just want to mention that Matthew 12:24 is one of them, where the Pharisees said, "This man casts out demons only by Beelzebul, the ruler of the demons." Now, we don't usually talk about Beelzebul. So where did that come from? In Hebrew, it means the Lord of Dung. That's a lovely title right there. And there's a long scholarly discussion about where that word came from. It would appear that the Jews, right before the first century, or even in the early first century, coined the term from a word. I mean, if you look at the word Beelzebul, you'll see the B-E-E-L at the start, which is similar to B-A-A-L, Baal, that idol in the Old Testament that's so often being worshipped. And the idea of Baal is just a lord. It's an idolatrous figure. It's like Zeus in the Greco-Roman pantheon. So there is a term that is very, very close to Beelzebul, which is the Lord of the Heights. And many people think that the Jews sort of changed the name a little bit to Beelzebul, which means Lord of Manure, in order to kind of scoff at Satan. And that may be true. And it's kind of interesting if that's what they did, to kind of do a play on words on his name. And for those of you who are using the King James, you have Beelzebub there, which means Lord of the Flies, which is a little bit different. That probably comes from the Latin Vulgate. It's a manuscript difference. There's actually a book out there called Lord of the Flies. That's where that comes from. Probably the title means the Lord of Dung. But hey, flies go around that too. So, and then there's one more. And again, this is just a curiosity I wanted to share with you. It's not a big deal. But if you'll turn back to Isaiah 13 and 14, one of the proper names that is often used to describe Satan is Lucifer. And you may have wondered where that term comes from. It is found sort of in the King James Version of Isaiah 14 and verse 12. But if you look at the whole passage, it is probably the case that Satan is not being addressed, but rather that the king of Babylon is being addressed. In fact, if you go all the way back to chapter 13 and verse 1, which is where this section of Isaiah starts, you'll notice that it is an oracle concerning Babylon, which Isaiah saw. And what's going on here is that the king of Babylon is going throughout the whole earth, conquering nation after nation after nation, because God gave him the power to do that. And Babylon, in fact, Isaiah is prophesying, is going to take over Israel. It's going to destroy Israel. So what's going on here is that, hold on just a second. Got to do something here real quick. All right, there we go. Back to the screen. So what is going on here is that God is now, through the prophecy of Isaiah, saying that the king of Babylon is exalting himself above all the other nations of the earth. In fact, even over God's people and over God himself, his pride is leading him to think that he's almost a godlike figure, but that it truly is the king of Babylon who is being addressed in this context. There's going to be a lot of overlap, but the person being discussed seems like it's the king of Babylon. Let me read it. Isaiah 14:12. How you have fallen from heaven, O star of the morning, son of the dawn. You have been cut down to the earth, you who have weakened the nations. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit on the mount of assembly in the recesses of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. Nevertheless, you will be thrust down to Sheol, to the recesses of the pit. So, and again, it really sounds like there's a lot of details that are similar to Satan. The word Lucifer is actually a translation of a translation of a translation of a translation. The Greek Septuagint is a Greek translation of the Hebrew scripture. It was done at about 250 BC, and it was a very popular translation in those days. It's the translation that most of our New Testament authors, in fact, use and quote from. But when you translate the Hebrew word into Greek, that word there is the word phosphorus, which undoubtedly, you don't have to be a chemist. You can recognize that that refers to one of the elements on our periodic table. It is an inflammable, luminous mineral. In World War II, they used phosphorus shells, rounds that they'd shoot out of guns and tanks that had phosphorus in them. And when they struck, they would burn with such a hot flame that it would not only kill men, but burn buildings and even burn holes in metal. So you see the association. It's a very bright thing, a very hot thing. In Greek, the word means bearer of light. And that is what the Greeks used to call the morning star, the herald of dawn. They call it the bearer of light. Now you translate that one into Latin. So we're going from Hebrew to Greek to Latin, and it's Lucius Fere, bearer of light. The King James, now you go from Latin to English, pick that up from the Latin Vulgate, and that is where we get the word Lucifer from. So Lucifer is an English translation of a Latin translation of a Greek translation of the Hebrew scripture. And probably in the context is not talking about Satan, is probably talking about the king of Babylon. Now, at the same time, let me share some other things with you, that there is a lot of overlap. And we should appreciate that what the king of Babylon was doing was very similar to the way we think of Satan behaving. For example, both Jude 6 and 1 Timothy 3 speak about Satan's great pride, that is what caused him to elevate himself and to rebel against God. Revelation 12 and 2 Peter 2 speak of Satan as being cast down. So that's certainly very similar. 2 Corinthians 11 and verse 14 calls Satan an angel of light, like Bruce just read for us. So we've got that going on. But I also want you to appreciate that the real morning star is Jesus. That's Revelation 22:16. So I would suggest, you are free to disagree with me if you would like, that Lucifer is not a correct, proper name for Satan. If you are used to that term and that's who he means to you, well, that's totally fine. But now at least you know where that name comes from. And the context is probably talking about the king of Babylon, not Satan. Satan certainly is an angel of light. He certainly is cast down. He certainly is a prideful being, but probably not the one referenced in Isaiah chapter 14, where you find that word in the King James Version. Okay, so what do you think about that? Any comments, questions? Yeah, go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, throughout not only throughout history, especially biblical history, kings elevated themselves to the point of being gods, being the bearers of light, being the judges of right and wrong, and almost to the point that they were infected. If you look at what elevated them, it almost appears that they were infected with Satan, the same as Satan entered Judas, or Jesus told Peter, "Get behind thee, Satan."
Right.
So I know I've read somewhere, and I can't really picture where, that Satan used the kings and the authorities
Yeah, that's
to
true.
further his will. So them thinking they were bright stars is just that elevation, that satanic elevation that they took on.
I think you've nailed it perfectly. I think you're absolutely correct that that's the link between the way the king of Babylon is described and Satan, and that even if it's not really accurate to describe him as Lucifer, he infects, the leaders of the world with that same kind of pride that they exalt themselves against God and over man, and eventually they will be brought down by that. Hey, by the way, those of you who are just joining us, I want to let you know that I am recording this. Woohoo, I remembered. And so I will post it later this afternoon so that you can go back and watch it if you'd like to. It will post to the church's YouTube channel. Just look for it there, which is also where the Wednesday night lesson will post, which is already recorded. All right, sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Just listening to our conversation here, it kind of just clicked in my mind that, oftentimes we view Satan as somebody kind of negative. We don't view him in a positive light. But honestly, Satan was an angel of light. Probably was good looking. Probably, eloquent in his speech. It wouldn't be somebody if we met him on the street that we would say, "Oh, that's Satan." It'd probably be somebody that we thought, "Oh, that's a nice guy."
Yeah, well dressed, well groomed, everything else. That's right. And that's, it would be easy if Satan would announce his presence by walking into the church building with his pitchfork and his horns and his tail and in a red suit. That's not the way that works. He disguises himself and works through others. In fact, that's a great segue to the last slide, which I went ahead and just sort of assembled all the other titles that I could find anywhere else in the New Testament to describe our adversary, the Satan. 1 Timothy 5:14, he is the enemy. We got to remember, he's not our friend. He does not seek for our best interests. He is the tempter. He is the ruler of the demons. He is a liar and the father of lies. He is a murderer. He is a roaring lion seeking for someone to devour. We'll talk more about that in a few weeks. He is the prince of the power of the air. Ancient people oftentimes thought of, the spirits being in the realm of the air. So he's the prince of those spiritual forces, the dark spiritual forces. The angel of the abyss, the great dragon, the serpent of old, the accuser of our brethren, the deceiver of the whole world, the God of this world. Got to remember, he's got power that we don't have. But at the same time, his power is not as great as God's. He is not all-powerful. He's not omniscient. And I don't even think that he has power over us that we do not willingly give to him. I don't think that Satan can make a Christian do anything that Christian does not want to do. I do not believe that Satan can override the will of a Christian. It is an open question to me whether or not Satan can override the will of a non-Christian, but certainly for those who have been redeemed by Christ, I do not believe that Satan has the power to override their will. He'll still go after us, but he can't make us do anything that we don't choose to do. He's the ruler of this world. It is he who is in the world to remind us that he's an ever-present danger. And of course, maybe the best of all, he is the evil one. Evil, not good. So don't give him an inch. All right, and that brings me to the end of my slides. What kind of thoughts do you got? Go ahead, Bruce.
Well, maybe one thing I overlooked this on your list there. I was reading it pretty fast. But Satan is also the false prophet of righteousness, as it said, I think in the 2 Corinthians 11th chapter, or was it 1 Corinthians? I'm not sure.
2 Corinthians 11.
Yeah, 11. Yeah, he's also in that category, or the leader of the category, the false prophet or false apostle of righteousness, which I don't know if that's on the list or not. And he certainly can't override the Christian spirit, but he can deceive the Christian spirit.
Yes, good point.
As it says in Revelations, the harlot that rides the beast will feast on the blood of believers. So he can deceive us the same way he deceived Eve.
That's right.
So once Satan knows our desires, he'll use that as part of the deception.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and that's something we've got to be very mindful of. And actually, we're going to take a whole lesson later on in this series to examine very closely the scene in the garden where Satan tempts Eve and Adam, and we're going to learn some things about the ways that Satan operates, again, so that no advantage can be taken of us by Satan. Good stuff. Jennifer, did you have a comment you were just going to say there?
I was just thinking about what I had shared with you of just us as Christians in this world. There's lots of deception all around us, in our government, everywhere. And it's just so important for us to think for ourselves and reference things, and just with reading our Bible and just not falling for things that we see.
Mm-hmm.
But really just looking for the evidence of certain things. That was really it.
Yeah, that's such a good comment. And we were talking about media reports that are out there. It's really difficult to know who to trust and what information is true. I'm not sure that there's any facet of our society, not even science, that has not become politicized, and people interpret the same scientific data different ways based on their political mindset. And it leaves the person who's seeking for the truth in a difficult spot. So I do kind of have the thought that, I'm not sure that every time a person gets sick, Satan goes, I got you. Although we'll actually study some of that stuff later, that Satan is in some ways responsible. But certainly the chaos of our world and the way that people are going at each other is chaos sown by Satan, and he's pleased with it. Alan, you had your hand up.
Yeah, could we go back to Revelations 22:16? I'm a little confused about that definition there, where it talks about the morning star.
Yeah.
I know there's some overlap here, but that seems to be a reach. Not real sure how that refers to the morning star, Jesus.
Great question. Let me pull that up in my Bible. Revelation 22 and verse 16. This is the conclusion of the book, and it's the reminder that Jesus is coming quickly. And there are a number of different titles that Jesus uses in this passage. Revelation 22:16. I, Jesus, have sent my angel to testify to you these things for the churches, a reference to the whole book of Revelation. I, that is Jesus, am, number one, the root and descendant of David. Number two, the bright morning star. And what that meant in that context is the morning star is the last star that you see before the dawn breaks. And so it's a symbol of hope. It's an idea that we're in the middle of the dark night right now, but that Jesus is coming soon. And so he sort of represents for us a beacon of hope, that, when he gets here, everything is going to be okay again. So on this slide, what I'm suggesting is that in the Isaiah 14 passage, where it describes him as the phosphorus, as the morning star, as the bearer of light, it's a little bit of a different meaning. And so when people identify the individual in that chapter as Lucifer, the bright morning star, I actually think it's kind of a little bit of a misleading thing, that Satan in no way, shape, or form is actually the bright morning star who is Jesus. Satan might parade himself as a bringer of light, but he isn't really.
Exactly.
That actually belongs to Jesus. That's all that I was meaning by that. So hopefully I answered that question. And if not, let me know. I'll do better.
No, that's great. I was just trying to see how it was tying into Lucifer there in Isaiah 14. So
yeah.
No, you answered my question. Thank you.
Cool. Brian, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's more of a role that you're filling than it is a title.
That's a good way to put it. Sure. It's good. All right. Anybody else? Go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, I was just marveling at how close Satan got to Jesus. In the form of Judas, he even kissed him.
Yes.
And then in the form of Peter, he got so close to Jesus. And I was thinking how close Satan can get to us in the church, how close Satan can get to us as Christians. And I don't know, I think that's a big discussion for me.
Yeah.
Of how close Satan can get.
Yep, I think that is a great point, and we have to be on our guard, and we will endeavor as we continue this study of Satan over the next few weeks to look at all the different ways that Satan does try to take advantage of us. In fact, I'm going to put that up one more quick little time because it makes a pretty good conclusion as well. We've been studying Satan's names, but here's the point, that no advantage would be taken of us by Satan, for we are not ignorant of his schemes. Mm-hmm. We want to know our enemy because knowledge is the key to keeping ourselves free of his influence. I don't know, some of you may have been, you know what, I'll bet you Brian James used to watch G.I. Joe. Did you ever used to watch the Saturday morning G.I. Joe cartoon? You didn't? What?
It was after my time, really.
No, it was not, because I used to watch it. You used to watch the Transformers.
We watched the Roadrunner.
Yeah, we watched Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo was our big one.
Ooh, ooh.
Gigi, you said He-Man?
Not He-Man. Well, we barely watched He-Man and She-Ra. We started getting too old for that.
Whatever. I know you watch it right now. You pull it up on Netflix and you're like, I'm gonna tuck into some He-Man and She-Ra right here.
We saw a lot. We had Three's Company, Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley.
Oh boy. Well, all right.
On Saturday morning?
Well, no, that's what he watched.
No, Saturday morning was Looney Tunes and Scooby-Doo. I can't remember and the Super Friends.
Anyway, if you watched manly programming, you would watch G.I. Joe. And one of the things that would happen at the end of G.I. Joe, they'd always do a PSA, a public service announcement. The different cartoon characters from G.I. Joe would get on there and be like, be a good neighbor. They'd show you doing all these good things. But they would always say, their slogan was, knowing is half the battle. Knowing is half the battle. And that, I think, is what this passage is telling us, that we need to know the schemes of our adversary so that we will be able to defeat him. And knowing these things, studying about our adversary will be half the battle in knowing how to defeat him. The other half is, of course, being true to God and saying no, but knowing is half the battle.
Yeah, and how subtle some of the schemes are.
Yeah, indeed. We will delve into those in great detail later on. All right, thank you all so very much. Again, for those of you just joining us, I'm going to post this in a few minutes so you can go back and watch it if you'd like. And Wednesday night is posted, and then it'll go live on Wednesday. You'll see it. So, all right, thank you, everybody. It's great to see you. Have a good morning. By the way, we had 54 in worship this morning, and it was a good service. If you want to go back and watch it, I'm not pressuring anybody. But there's still plenty of room in the pews. We're spread way out, way apart, skipping every other pew and staying on the ends. And there's room for a few more. So if you're interested, we'd love to see you. If you're not ready yet, we totally understand, completely understand that. But we're pretty spread out. So, all right, y'all.
John, are you going to be there Sunday?
Yes.
Okay. Because recording Wednesday night, I wasn't sure if you were going to be.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Hold on here just a second. Whoops, that's not what I want.